Hotep, and welcome to today's Matters of Diversity with Dr. B. Today, I'm really excited because we're going to be talking with Dr. Deichen, Dr. Michael Deichen, who is the Associate Vice President here at the University of Central Florida for Student Health Services. It's important for us to have this conversation today, and the reason why is because everybody's mind is around this pandemic. And while we are concerned with where we are going to be moving forward with this pandemic, with the vaccine and how people are going to be vaccinated over the next couple of months. We wanted to talk about it here at UCF so we can be up to speed on where it's going. But before I even go into any of that, today is a day of unrest in the United States. A lot is going on. As we're getting ready to start this podcast today, there are people who are rioting and having, I guess, their say in terms of how they're seeing the politics of our nation playing itself out. And so I just wanted to take a moment of silence so that we remember that we are a nation of immigrants and people who are here to kind of live a great life without the drama and the stress that seems to be occurring right now over the election cycle that just occurred. And so I just want to take a moment just to kind of recognize that we have to come together. We have to be together. And while people want advancement and people want to be able to move forward with regards to how life is going to be for all, with equity and diversity and inclusion at the forefront from my perspective, I just want us all to kind of just remember that while we get ready to engage into this conversation about the coronavirus, that there are other things that are happening in the world as well. And so I just want us to kind of to have some type of recognition of that. And I pray for peace and that this resolves itself soon without there being a lot of harm that's done to our nation in any way, shape, or form. So it's going to be a big day today, and we're going to be talking with Dr. Michael Deichen. As I said, he's here at UCF, and he is the head of our medical clinic, which serves in excess of 67,000 patients every year. He is a vice chair on the University of Central Florida's Institutional Review Board and has participated as an investigator with various clinical trials and grants. He currently is the lead physician for the UCF COVID planning. He is also a diplomat of the American Board of Family Medicine and a member of the American College Health Association. He also serves as a professor of family medicine for the University of Central Florida's College of Medicine. Dr. D has a long-standing interest in community health and family medicine and has included many public health initiatives that he's been a part of. I appreciate the fact that he's here, and I just want to bring him on and have and engage in a very wonderful conversation on how we can protect ourselves and be ready to move forward as the nation begins to get vaccinated with the vaccination that was created. Right now we have 2, I believe, and then we'll go into that some more. But welcome. How are you? How's everything going with you today?
I'm doing great too, Dr. Butler. And thank you for that moment of contemplation. COVID is one thing, but the unrest is very upsetting. One of the things I love most about our country is diversity. It would be so boring if everything were the same. So thank you for inviting me today. I'm happy to discuss my perspectives on COVID. It's been a fascinating year since the virus first emerged in China. And I've been telling people we're close. We're oh so close to be on the other side of COVID. So I'm happy to share my thoughts.
Excellent. So just to jump in, there's so much concern, right? We've been masking up and we've been trying to do our best at being socially distanced and things along those lines. But now we have on the forefront two vaccinations that are, or vaccines. I'm not even saying it right. What am I supposed to be saying? Is it vaccinations?
I would say vaccines, sure.
Vaccines. Okay, I had it right the first time. I'm messing myself up. So anyway, so the vaccines are here, and people have concerns about them, right? People who maybe are shy with taking the flu vaccine and things along those lines. What are some misnomers that we could talk about right off the bat that people should be aware of with regards to these two vaccines?
Yeah. So first of all, I think it ties to what's happening in the Capitol, this unrest and mistrust that there has been a certain mistrust in the process. It's been so unusual. Usually vaccines take years to develop. They take 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And appropriately, there was an urgency to get vaccine developed much more quickly. And it's really interesting, Dr. Butler, the means to do this has been evolving for decades with how to speed up vaccine development. We had our H1N1 pandemic some years ago, and turned out to not be as serious as we had feared. But there was a realization back then that we need to have quicker systems for vaccine development. So when the the disease was initially found in China back in January, it was apparent that this was a unique virus. And scientists will use the term novel. It's new. We've never been exposed to it before. We have no immunity to it.
Right.
And there are various stages that the World Health Organization uses to classify the threat. And they watch, does it spread from animals to persons? Does it spread from persons to persons? Does it spread readily? And so once it crosses that line that it is spreading readily, and it was doing that in Wuhan back in February, January timeframe, the red flag is up. We've got to try to slow this. We've got to try to control it. But the amazing thing, getting back to the vaccines, is that within a relatively short period of time, the DNA of the virus had been sequenced. By doing that, it opened the door for vaccines to be developed this year. So right. It's just incredible science that has been behind this. And it's the whole world has been focused in a way I've never witnessed in my life. We think about the bad things that are happening now. This was a remarkable good thing. This was a remarkable, great thing for mankind, and it's not only great with COVID, but there are going to be other, I hate to say it, there will be other threats in the future. And there's a method now that's been developed. So I think that people need to think, to reflect on the science and the integrity of that science that was used to create these vaccines, some of which were not created in the United States, and some of which have been, and how closely they've been monitored for safety with the various human trials to get to the point that we can now use it. It's been a very thorough process that I personally have followed closely. I've been fascinated by it, and so it's really a great development in many ways to get to the point where we are now, where we have vaccine and we can go on the offense. We've been on the defense for a year, but now we can go on the offense, get people vaccinated and keep them safe.
So the thing that you reminded me of just now, that so when you hear that COVID-19, I've heard people say that there's been 18 other, I guess, variations of this type of virus. Has that helped too with maybe calming people's fears about how fast this vaccine has come around. And now we're hearing talks of there's being 3 or 4 different variants that have kind of spawned from this. Should people take comfort with what you just shared in terms of, it's not so much that it was quick that it came out, it's that science was able to kind of really embrace the process and really
Yeah.
put forth this method.
Yeah, they applied the existing knowledge that had incrementally been developed over time, and for the most part, the vaccines, there's 2 proteins on the virus, the spike proteins that you hear about, and so they wisely chose that as sort of the object for the antibodies that our bodies are developing as part of the vaccination to work against, because it's something that all these COVID viruses have, regardless of the variant. So we know that viruses, they mutate constantly. The influenza virus, the coronavirus, other viruses, and for the most part, those mutations don't do anything. Every once in a while, they may lead to a virus that is potentially spread more easily, or that could have more severe symptoms. But for the most part, these mutations don't lead to change. In fact, a lot of times the mutations may prevent replication of the virus even. And they're not necessarily good for the virus. and so, mutations do occur. It's normal, it's expected. And as of this moment, it's a belief that the vaccines that we currently have are effective against these other strains. I think in our head we think, oh, another strain.
Yeah.
That sounds so ominous, doesn't it?
Right.
But it's a minor difference, in the design of the vaccine is such that it shouldn't matter.
Shouldn't matter. That's excellent. That's good to hear. I mean, that
Yeah.
kind of solves some issues for me with regards to that. So when you think about person getting the vaccine, can you tell me what happens in the body once the person gets the vaccine? And is it something that they are aware of that's happening, other than having maybe some mild symptoms and things along those lines? But I know some people who have gotten the vaccine as of now, and what is it that's happening to their body that they know that the vaccine's there, or is it just go on with life as normal?
Yeah, all of those things. I mean, frequently as human beings, we're exposed to infectious organisms, viruses, bacteria, yeast, and so on and so forth. And our body has, I just think it's a mind-blowing system to recognize those entities and destroy them and protect us. And they tend to do it either through development of antibodies or on a cellular basis with the cells. It's called phagocytosis, where they envelop the virus or clusters of virus and destroy it that way too. Mm-hmm. So there's different arms of our immune system, and all the time, Kent, our bodies are doing this. Our bodies are doing this, and we most often are not aware of it. Right? We're exposed to something, and our body is having this fight. Oftentimes, we may be sick over the course of our lives, and we have an illness that we recognize. Sometimes we don't recognize that, though. A lot of illnesses are asymptomatic, but the immunity is developing. We've seen that with this particular virus. So the same applies to vaccine. It's the same. It's the same that the vaccines are designed to teach our immune systems to react to the COVID virus. They're teaching our immune systems, and they do it in various ways. It's very clever. And sometimes, as with the AstraZeneca vaccine that's being released in England, they're using a virus of a different type, an adenovirus, that contains pieces of the COVID virus. With regards to the Moderna vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, they're using something called messenger RNA to teach our cells to react to the virus. But it's all the same that happens in nature. It's what our bodies are doing all the time. So
it's an enhancement, so to speak.
It's an enhancement. It's an enhancement.
So can you talk a little bit about how come they're taking it in double doses, and whether or not we have to start taking this vaccine periodically like we do the flu virus?
There still is a lot that's not known. And you raise one question, how often might we need to get vaccinated for this virus? It's interesting. Another coronavirus is SARS. SARS is an acute respiratory disease that is highly fatal. It's scarier than COVID, but is not as infectious as COVID has been. We know that people have had antibodies for 14 years after having had SARS, and it's a coronavirus. It's the same kind of virus, and it's possible. This is my hope. My hope actually is that when people are immunized, it will be long-acting. Long-lasting protection. This is an emerging idea. Earlier in the year, there was a fear this wouldn't be the case, and that people, maybe the vaccine would only last months, and they just didn't know. But it's appearing more and more that it could be that the vaccination will protect us for a long period of time. Now, we've only just begun to vaccinate people, so we don't know. Maybe it will be a year, maybe it will be 5 years or 10 years. And with other vaccines like hepatitis B, for example, we didn't really know how long that would last until it had been utilized for a while. And then the standards are developed. Oh, you need to get vaccinated with this frequency. So that's what's going to happen as we go forward. And with some of the vaccines are developing, you need 2 shots, some you need 1 shot. And it's just the way that the vaccine's been designed to teach our immune system to respond. They're a little different. Most of them right now are 2-shot vaccines.
So the 2 shots is to help our body adapt to it better, as opposed to getting the full force of it all.
That's true. Yeah, your body learns from this first shot, and it learns more from the second. It gets you to that point of full immunity, and I'm using the word full. It's about 95% protective, the 2 that we have right now. Without that second shot, you wouldn't get as high an immunity.
That's interesting. So the other thing I've heard, and I guess I'm just throwing off things that I've heard from different sources, blood type.
Yeah.
That this coronavirus actually, that depending on the type of blood that you have, might be more of a protective factor than other blood types. Is that true?
I've seen evidence of that. I don't understand it, but there's still a lot we don't understand with science. And it appears likely, and I believe it's with the O-negative folks.
Yeah.
And
I thought I had O-negative, then I went and looked and I didn't. So I was like, I really paid attention.
Some you lose some. Yeah. Well, I don't understand that, but our immune systems are so intricate. And also just there's different drugs that are being utilized to treat COVID-19 infections.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some evidence that drugs that we use for other purposes. There's a medication that's used for um, uh, uh, basically parasitic types of infections or yeast infections
Mm-hmm.
may have some benefit with COVID-19. So it's interesting. It's a complex physiology with the viruses, and if there's a drug, a substance that interferes with that somehow, it may be beneficial.
Right.
What I would say though, Ken, is we need to stick with what we're sure works. So.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense. So,
Yeah.
when a person comes in contact with it, so we've seen all these tests when they show people sneezing and they show the different air follicles or whatever you call it, molecules, kind of branching out. So I'm curious as to, like, if it touches your skin or gets onto you, you touch something, it's on your hands, you rub your nose. What is that transmission like? How does it then get into your system so that it does then take effect as a virus within your body? I mean, I can't believe that just from touching it or just from wiping your nose, you automatically are going to be possibly infected by this. So
Yeah, this is a good question. Most infections appear to be from airborne exposure. So
okay.
not by touching things, 95% of infections, but there is a subset of infections that are acquired from our touching surfaces where live virus exists.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's interesting is it takes enough inoculum, it takes enough virus particles. One virus isn't going to do it. It takes many thousands of viruses to infect an individual.
So that makes sense why you should be with like 15 minutes. If you're with someone who has it for 15 minutes, then you're going to get more and more of the virus in your system.
Yeah, that inoculum. And so it's easier to get that inoculum by inhaling, someone's respiratory secretions than touching something and then touching your eye or your mouth. And the virus doesn't live well on surfaces. It just doesn't. So we're fortunate about that. Also, it's interesting. It is extremely sensitive to light. So most of that contact exposure is indoor risk. It's not outdoors because sunlight is a beautiful natural protection from COVID.
So regardless of whether it's freezing outside or hot.
Yeah, so UV radiation, ultraviolet light that bathes our Earth, that reduces this particular infection. And actually, it does so with a variety of viruses.
Right.
And UV light is being used more and more inside to sterilize environments. It's interesting.
Right. So the thing is that most people who are contracting it to the point where it's life-threatening for them, it does kind of attach to maybe some pre-existing conditions that they may have. So that's one of the reasons why maybe young people and people who are in good health are not necessarily affected as poorly or as badly as someone who might have asthma or something along those lines. And is that true?
That's very true. It's interesting that if you think about the health risks, there are things that make a lot of sense, such as asthma. It's a pulmonary condition. If you have asthma, you're going to be at greater risk. Obesity is a factor too. Why is obesity a factor? But it is a factor. We've demonstrated that persons that are heavy are at greater risk of COVID complications. And it makes sense with some other things like cardiovascular disease and
Right.
smoking. But there's a list of about 8 medical conditions that increase an individual's risk for the COVID.
So let me ask you a quick question about obesity, because, I hear that, right? People say, well, this person's obese.
Yeah.
And you look at them and you're like, they're barely, got meat on their bones, and they're considered obese. How is that really kind of defined? Because I've heard people say that I'm considered obese. And you look at them, you're like, well, I've seen people who I would consider obese, and I don't think you're one of them. But
Yeah.
still,
And you may be right, and I'm not a nutritionist, but obesity should be defined by your BMI, and not necessarily by your weight. Because some people, they have a bigger bone structure, they have more muscle mass, and their weight is heavier. So the BMI attempts to calculate, how much fat is a part of your body compared to your body as a whole. So BMI is typically better. Sometimes nutritionists will use other measures to make that definition of obesity. And so you're right. So there are people, the bodybuilders, if you went simply by weight, you might consider them to be obese. Now we're getting a little bit into a side path here, because I really don't know.
yeah, that's fine. And it
Which
just threw
group
me off,
is at
because
risk
I
for
heard that,
COVID?
this
I
person-
don't know, but I would suspect it's the persons that have genuine obesity,
Okay.
because it seems like physical fitness is protected.
Okay. That makes sense. I do know that I get less sick the more I am actively taking care of myself. So I don't get colds as much, and as when I feel like I've been physically active.
Yeah.
I don't think maybe there's something that's attuned to keeping you healthy. I know that's supposed to, but I mean, when I think about it in the long run, I know that like when I am off my game in terms of working out or something like that, I'm more apt to catch a cold or something like that than if I am staying pretty physically fit in my regimen.
Yeah.
So,
Exercise is, the best medication that exists
yeah.
in so many ways.
So going back to the COVID situation, so I have an older sister who contracted it, and
I'm sorry.
thank God she's okay. She was in the hospital twice, but the second time that she went back to the hospital is because she had some sharp pains in her back, and it was determined that she had blood clots.
Okay.
And so they put her on blood thinners and some other things, and she seemed to have come through it swimmingly.
Good.
I'm praying that she stays on track, but you also have to stay on track. You have to listen to the doctors. You have to listen to what they say in terms of that. So she had like pneumonia, COVID pneumonia is what they called it.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question to you is, what is it about this disease that attacks the blood system or whatever that make these types of clots kind of occur? Because people don't know about clots until like it's too late.
Yeah, it's also related to how our immune system interfaces with the virus. It's interesting, one of the greatest risks of a COVID infection can occur when there's a marked acceleration of immune reaction, such that the immune system itself floods the lungs and causes the respiratory system to decompensate. It's called a cytokine storm. It's our immune system just attacking the virus so briskly. But also, with this particular virus, there's a complex interaction that occurs with our blood vessels and in our cardiovascular system that can affect many organs. It can increase the risk of clots. It can potentially affect other organs, the heart, uh, and the kidneys, the brain. Um, and so one of the things we really don't understand right now, what are the long-term consequences
Right.
of a serious COVID infection? You know, the, with your sister, you kind of know what happened. You know, there was the clot, it was recognized, and that's great because they got her on blood thinners, they're protecting her. You can imagine that there are people that maybe had a smaller insult,
Yeah.
and a smaller insult uh, to one of the organs I've talked about that later maybe will have symptoms or problems, and we don't know that. That's a concern of this particular virus, and why it's so important that we get vaccinated when that's available to all of us.
So someone like her who now has contracted it, and
Yeah.
she's up north, she's up in Connecticut, so she's
Okay.
far away from me, so I'm good. Uh, I say that jokingly, but I
Yeah.
love my sister dearly. But the um, the vaccine she should take now that she is, and there's like you don't necessarily build immunity on your own, so to
Yeah.
speak, without the vaccine.
That's also interesting. So the CDC recommendation is that even if you've had the infection, that you should get vaccinated. Now, we wouldn't want people who are actively ill,
Okay.
in my opinion, to get vaccinated. With based on the knowledge that I have now, but even persons that have been infected should get vaccinated. And the reason is we know how protective the vaccine is. We do not know how protective illness is, because there have been documented cases of people getting sick more than once.
Right.
It seems rare, but it can happen. We know how protective the vaccine is. We don't know how protective the illness is. Now, what I would say is that with more severe illness, I would guess that probably provides more long-lasting protection. With
Mm.
milder illness, and so many people were asymptomatic, half of people, or who had mild symptoms, you might guess that their immune system wasn't primed or challenged as much, and maybe they would especially be more susceptible to getting sick again, catching again. So it's not worth taking chances. It's best to get vaccinated, even if you had it before.
Yeah. So, what should we at UCF be preparing ourselves for with regards to the vaccination? Are there any things that we as employees, students, staff, and administrators, what is it that other than waiting for our turn, what kind of things can we kind of be educating ourselves on or preparing ourselves for? Because I know people are getting tired of wearing masks and
Yes,
and being socially distanced, and I mean, that
for sure.
frustration is there for sure. But what is it? How do we get to the other side of this?
Well, okay. So understanding that we're close, it's not another year that people have to wait. It's weeks or months till people can get vaccinated. It's not long. Also, that we're probably getting to the other side of the third wave. The best analytics suggest that we're peaking in Florida right now with our cases, and that's going to be coming down in the subsequent weeks. Our hospitalizations won't peak for another 2 or 3 weeks. So in some ways, okay, let's get through this month, especially. Let's
Mhm.
be really careful. It's not a year that you have to, you know, uh, you know, take these significant protective steps. But you really do need to be careful this month, because the worst thing would be to, wear masks and physically distance yourself. And the day before you're going to get the vaccine, you get infected. So we want people to still be careful, and be careful till you've completed your vaccination. But it's not far. It's not far. Don't lose hope. It's okay. We're getting close. We're really close. And so this is a time to be careful, and let's get through this third wave, and things will get better.
So did it make sense for them to say you're doing this for yourself more than you're doing? I forgot how they used to say it, but
Yeah,
like,
I've heard it both ways.
wear a mask because you're protecting yourself more than you're protecting the other person.
Yeah. Initially, this is another amazing thing, is that it was not clearly understood what the value of those masks were. Were they protecting the individual at all? And a lot of very notable, leaders in the field said it provides no protection. I remember when this first started. Well, they've shown that it does, protect. In fact, there's some data that the overall protection of physical distancing and facial coverings could be as high as 87%, which is similar to the vaccine. It provides a lot of protection. So, definitely we want to use the facial covering and practice physical distancing.
Right. So
it makes a big difference, and it's protecting others too. It's protecting.
So you're covering your nose and your mouth, which seems to be maybe the fastest way that you can it can become into your system.
Yeah.
But you said that if we touch our eye and it gets in our eye, it can come into that way as well. Most people are just wearing masks, their eyes are exposed. So what stops the airborne stuff from really getting those people? You could be protected with the mask, but if it's airborne, it's going to get you in the eyes, right?
That's a brilliant perspective. I would say it's the inhalation process that pulls the inoculum deeper into our system, and
it goes back to what you said too. The more you have in your system, the more it's going to then affect.
For sure.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's just something that
question
for me when you talked about it in that way.
Yeah, and I would think there is some vulnerability, and maybe that when these studies say 87%, maybe it's because they're not covering their eyes. I don't know, but it appears to be a small piece of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited and encouraged by the fact that you say that the end is near, right? That there's the light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to it. I think the important piece is also recognizing that it's just a moment in time that you don't get to see this person or have this celebration or things along those lines. And I know that it really kind of kicks rocks for someone who's ready to graduate or wants to walk across the stage and things along those lines. And I get it. I understand how momentous that is in someone's life. But how do you attach that, or is it something that we should kind of even consider attaching that to the value in life itself, right? It's definitely important to walk across that stage, but it's really more important that we have you in our existence, right? Is there something that that resonates with you at all?
I suppose we all need priorities, and it's a great thing that individuals are graduating, that they've completed their coursework, they have an opportunity to move on to a job or further education, whatever it may be. It's in some ways a reasonable price to pay for safety. I guess I would think of it as, I know it's kind of a sad thing to not have that moment of recognition, but the risk, the potential harm is just so great. And it's not just to that group, to that student, that 20-year-old.
Mhm.
But what we've discovered is that a lot of young adults tend to be the vectors for the society as a whole. So
Mhm.
it's the 15 to 30-year-olds that are more socially engaged and worry less about risk, that tend to spread it to the broader population. That could be, you know, our grandparents and or people that are immune compromised or all sorts of others. So, when you're taking a chance, the risk isn't just to yourself; it's to the rest of the population.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that makes sense. And again, it goes back to just being a good citizen, right? Just being a good a participant in society where everybody is looking out for the other person, and it almost seems in a sense really selfish to kind of say, well, I'm not worried about that. That's a hoax. That's this. That's whatever. So I'm not going to wear a mask. And and to see the tie to to see the tie to that in terms of I don't have control over my own body. You can't control my body by telling me to wear a mask. I just don't see. I just didn't see that connection. I didn't. That one threw me for a loop in terms of I'm not going to wear this because you can't tell me what to do with my body.
You know
And
what's interesting is COVID-19 shows how connected the world is. If you think
yeah.
about it, it started with a person or two in China and
Hmm.
spread, and now has exposed, probably a billion plus people. We're so interconnected. It's incredible. And so thinking in terms of yourself with something as highly as infectious as this just doesn't work. It's affecting many others.
Yeah. Most definitely. Most definitely. So, what are some tips other than what we already know? Anything new, especially for those of us who are preparing to take the vaccination sometime soon?
Mhm.
Should we be doing something in terms of our eating habits, or just to be prepared for this? And how do people deal with? I mean, a lot of people say that their right arm hurts for a day or so.
Yeah.
Is there any type of preparation or any type of real, or do you just have to suffer through the pain? What can people do to be ready?
Yeah. So a few things. You know, the vaccine availability is evolving, and I think what we're going to witness is that it's going to go from being available to a small number to being available everywhere. It's
Mhm.
going to take a couple of months to get to that point, uh, but it's evolving. Uh, what you need to do at this stage is to be aware of where vaccine is available depending on your group. If you're over 65, for example, you can now get vaccinated with Orlando Health, and you have to pay attention to their website and link into that. And that'll probably happen with essential workers, which a lot of the UCF faculty and staff, or students that have chronic illnesses, they'll be next up. So that as when the vaccine is in limited supply, you have to stay alert to the resource,
Right.
to be checking on the web when vaccine becomes available. Um, Other than that, it really is mostly the same steps we've been taking this whole year that we've all learned so well with, hand hygiene and facial covering and physical distancing.
Mhm.
Uh, it's been amazing the cultural shift that's inspired with the way we do things, with takeout food versus eating in restaurants, all this kind of stuff. So you got to keep that up. You got to keep
Yeah.
that up and take care of yourself and find joy where you can. Exercise, do good things for yourself.
So UCF, there's a possibility that we'll become a site for
Yeah,
that.
that's what we're trying to establish. We're in conversation with the Florida Department of Health and on how to do that. Um, And the first step is for us, the university, to acquire a vaccine. We have the necessary storage for the vaccine. We have a draft plan that's been constructed on how we would deliver it to the campus. And our plan is we could vaccinate up to 4,000 persons per day once we get that vaccine, because it's our goal to vaccinate up to 20,000 persons in a week. The sooner the better.
Right.
And so we have those plans, we have that potential, but we don't have vaccine. The vaccine, is going to persons over 65 now, persons in long-term congregate living facilities, healthcare workers. It hasn't yet been opened up for essential workers, which is what I would describe most of our faculty and staff. And that's what we're waiting for. And I think that's when we'll get our allotment and be able to take steps to deliver the vaccine.
So how come they have such a hard and fast cutoff age, right? So how come it's not you're 65, but if you're 64 and 3/4 of a,
Yeah.
how come they're not allowing those individuals to is that just because of the shortage of the vaccine?
I think so. And it's, every state is doing things a little differently. The 65 number is one that CDC did recommend, though. And some states are starting with much older people,
Yeah.
80 years of age, or 70, and so on and so forth. So it's very subjective. Or
I just can't imagine being 64 and your birthday is next month and you're like,
yeah,
I can't.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
I just think that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is.
So I really just have one last question. I'm probably going to have a lot
Okay.
more, but the question I have is, so that you can either get the Pfizer or the Moderna, and it's either 3 weeks or 4 weeks between the
That's
times you get the two shots. What is the time after you get the shot that you feel as though you've gone through what the purpose of getting the shot for in the first place?
It looks like it's a week after the second shot that you have full protection.
Okay.
Now, interestingly, probably you're developing incremental protection from the first day on, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But to reach the full protection, it's 1 week after the second shot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the studies have shown. There were small numbers of people that got sick in the first week after the second shot, but after that, it was extremely negligible.
Okay. And then you got people who are taking the shot and, they have them sitting there for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then they're told to go on about their business. Is there anything that in that day that they should be concerned about or thinking about?
So it's like any vaccine that you receive. There's going to be some soreness of your shoulder where you got the shot. And there's a variety of mild side effects that you may have that range from achiness or feeling chilled or tired, things like that, not dangerous, that are transient in nature. If you happen to have those, you can take Tylenol, for instance, to blunt the effect.
So people shouldn't be fearful of actually contracting the coronavirus.
Oh no, it's not possible. It's not possible that you could contract.
But that's a fear that people have.
That is an urban legend that's been around forever. And the reason I believe people think that is because the symptoms that we get after a shot from our immune system reacting to the vaccine feel kind of like you're sick, but you're not. It's just your immune system doing its thing.
Reacting.
But people think, oh, now I've got the flu, or now I've got COVID, but it's really just the side effects of the immune reaction.
Okay.
And actually that that's a good thing in some ways. It means, hey, my immune system is doing its thing,
Those are
and it's not necessarily bad to have a sore
yeah.
shoulder or a little symptoms. Also of interest, the symptoms seem to be worse after the second shot. Um, I say that, but still,
It's more in your system then.
percentages are very low.
Yeah. And so Black and brown communities have been really, I guess, really kind of leery of
Yeah,
anything that's medical,
yeah,
based on historical history that kind of shares that maybe they have some reason to kind of be suspect
yeah.
or skeptical.
Mhm.
So what would you say to communities of people who really feel as though, I want to wait it out. I don't trust it yet. What are some things that can kind of relieve or kind of help
Mhm.
people to kind of not be so fearful?
Well, and I understand that fear, and I would say that the science has demonstrated the safety of the vaccine, um, and we know the benefits of taking it. This is a pathway to return to normal. Um, it, 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 it would exacerbate the problems that people of color have not to take it. The people of color have been disproportionately impacted by COVID with hospitalizations and death rates, and not taking the vaccine would make that worse. It would just make it worse. Um, I think we've had uh, great community leadership so far with all sorts of people getting the vaccine. Um, uh, Dr. Fauci got it. That was one of the flags I was waiting for, because I think he's someone I really trust.
Right.
But the science is good. Uh,
I have to admit though, I'm like, are they really getting the vaccine though? I mean, they.
are they really what?
I'm
Say
just
it
kidding.
again.
I'm joking. I'm joking. I don't want to sow any
Okay.
fear
Okay.
into it. I'm
Sure.
just
Sure.
messing around with that. But I
Yeah.
did see the vice president and the president elect uh, get it, and I didn't see Fauci get it. Yeah, I heard he had gotten it, but I didn't actually see video of him doing that. But I think that you're right. Watching those people having faith in it really kind of changed my mindset, because I actually said, yeah, I'll hold off a little bit and I'll wait to see what's going on. I don't
I,
hit the
I
eight.
like there was a when the first people that got vaccinated in the U.S., one of the persons was African American,
Mhm.
and she was a woman in her 50s that worked in the hospital. And I read an interview of her. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but
Yeah,
she
New York, I believe.
she did her a lot of her motivation was to demonstrate to others,
Right.
um, the safety and the need.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I've known
so
people who have gotten it now, and I know people who said they wouldn't get it, and I think that's it's changing. I think there's one thing to be concerned about what happened with Tuskegee and some other things, and there's a whole other thing when you know that there is a nation in a world of people who are being affected by this disease, and that it wouldn't behoove the medical society at all to come at one particular group of individuals when they know the seriousness of this illness and what it really projects onto these types of communities, especially those who are fearful of that. So I thank you for your time and your expertise, and I'm glad that UCF is on the radar when it comes to maybe being a place where people can come and get vaccinated. We need good stories coming out of UCF, and so I'm hopeful that we can move forward in that vein, in terms of being a place that kind of showcases this is how we get it done, right? This is where we're moving forward to. So I appreciate all that you do, your wisdom, the things that you brought to the podcast today has really been powerful, and I hope that it resonates with folks. And thank you just for just speaking your truth. I think that's really the most important part of it. So, any last things? Anything you
Anything I
want to
would say, I would say to my family, uh, and the same about getting the vaccine. I would recommend it to them and everyone I love. So it is the right thing to do, no doubt. And I appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you and to share this information with your audience. The more we can share our opinion, the greater the positive impact we might have.
Well, thank you for doing what you do, and hopefully we'll see each other again on campus,
Absolutely.
face to face, maybe with masks at first, but we'll be able to get back to our way of life that we had here on campus, more sooner than later.
Absolutely.
So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank you
Dr.
all for
Butler.
tuning in today, and being a part of our podcast. I hope that you are able to take something and it resonates with you, and you really start to think about what this next stage is going to be for you as we get vaccinated and get back to a little bit more normalcy in our lives. And so it's really fun having this conversation today. We should not be fearful at all of what this virus has done. It's done its worst. Now we're taking control, and so that is the most important part of it all. We have our show coming up next week, or on Friday, I should say, not next week. So we hope that you come and tune in on 1 o'clock on a Friday. And thank you so much. Thank you to our UCF Foundation for helping us to kind of put forth this podcast. But most of all, thank you all. Happy New Year. And we're just excited about what the possibilities of 2021 is going to bring for all of us. So have a good day. Thank you.